Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever in the world you are. Welcome to this program. Tonight, I would like to discuss the issue of the mountain of evidence to show that Zanu PF, showing that Zanu PF is rigging the 2023 elections. It is unbelievable that some people still maintain that we have got to participate in these elections regardless, particularly our opposition and their supporters. That flies against, that doesn't make any sense at all. You have to have rules. What is the point of saying, for instance, we want verified voters roll? We don't want violence. If those in the position to ensure that they are verified voters roll, to ensure that there's no violence, there's no rigging, etc., are able to ignore those rules and carry on, particularly if it is to their advantage, and we still continue participating, of course, doesn't make any sense. What is the incentive then for them to adhere to the rules? The issue of we must participate in this election regardless is nonsense. And that is the question that must now be challenged vigorously. And those who still maintain that position taken to task. Zanu PF is rigging the 2023 elections just as it has rigged elections in the past. That is a fact. And that is a fact that we must deal with. And those who are participating to give Zanu PF legitimacy must be taken to task. We have a situation here that has been known since the dawn of civilization, of human civilization. The glory of Caesar versus the good of Rome. When we're dealing with things like elections and the rules are meant to help the good of Rome. Everyone should have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. If we're going to discard those rules by those who are in positions of power and authority, because it is to their advantage, then we end up with a situation where the glory of Caesar is more important than the good of Rome. We end up, as we have done in Zimbabwe, with a situation where those in positions of power and authority enrich themselves. This is the house of Mugabe, the late dictator of Zimbabwe, Robert Gabriel Mugabe. The building we can see above is his house, the Blue Roof Mansion. Some people believe as much as 2 to 4 billion US dollars was spent in building that mansion. Below it is the house that some people in Zimbabwe are living in today, as we speak. This is the structure that somebody calls a home. That is what we're talking about here. The glory of Caesar versus the good of Rome? Why should millions of people in Zimbabwe today be living in abject poverty so that those in positions of power and authority can enjoy lives of unparalleled luxury? Unparalleled luxury. What we have seen ever since the country attained its independence is the systematic denying of the people's basic fundamental right to have a meaningful say in the governance of the country by those in positions of power and authority in the interests of promoting their selfish greed. Since independence, 1980, Zimbabwe has not had free, fair, and credible elections. That is a fact. That has allowed uh, Zanu PF to stay in power and abuse their position in power to satisfy their insatiable greed for absolute power and the wealth and the influence that comes with it. What makes the situation in Zimbabwe untenable and obnoxious is Zanu PF as everyone, including the very people we expect to uphold the to pursue and defend the rights of the individuals, defend and uphold and hold Zanu PF to account, stop Zanu PF rigging elections, for instance. The opposition, they've got everyone in their pockets. What we have seen in preparation for these 2023 elections is Zanu PF paying cars for the chiefs to buy their loyalty, giving village heads all manner of allowances because they are now political commissars of the party. And yet, critical services like education and healthcare have been neglected. Teachers are being paid ridiculous salaries like 70, 100 pounds, US dollars rather, a month, way below the poverty datum line. And this has resulted in many teachers and nurses leaving the country, as they've done, as with many other professions. Our education system has all but collapsed. Our healthcare have all but collapsed. And yet, the regime continues to pour hundreds of millions of dollars in buying the votes, in bribing those in positions of power and authority who can assist the regime to stay in power, and in bribing the opposition itself to do as the regime pleases for the sake of the regime. This is what makes it so difficult. In a normal, healthy, functioning democracy, we would expect the opposition to be fighting in the corner of the ordinary people, demanding that the regime should not abuse its power to stay to stay in power. But when you have bribed the opposition itself, that's when you realize this is a situation where the regime can surely do what as it pleases. Who is holding Zanu PF to account? What we have seen in this country is absurd. The opposition are now in Zanu PF's deep pockets. Instead of the ones saying to the regime they must hold free, fair, and credible elections, they must um, uh, respect the people's rights to a meaningful say in the governance of the country, they are now cooperating with the regime to keep it in power. I keep referring to David Coltart's book because in it, he admitted, this is not me speaking, he is the one who is admitting it, that in Zimbabwe, the elections have become so flawed, so illegal, that the obvious thing to do is to withdraw from the elections. But why is the opposition continue to participate? Simple. Because they could not resist what Zanu PF was offering them. In November, we saw Zanu PF, the regime, offering members of parliament US $40,000. They called it a loan, but we all know that it's not a loan. It's free money. This is over and above where if you are a member of parliament, regardless of whether it's Zanu PF or the opposition, you get $60,000 as a car allowance. This is over and above the generous salaries and allowances that members of parliament get. So the opposition, who should be holding Zanu PF to account, have now joined the gravy train. They've been participating in these elections, knowing fully well that Zanu PF is drinking those elections, knowing fully well that Zanu PF will come out with a clear majority so that they can do whatever they like. But they could not resist participating because they were after the bribes that the regime has been offering. We cannot change our political situation in Zimbabwe because of that exactly. Zanu PF now has got ZEC, the police, the chiefs, the headmen, the CIO, we saw it the other day, being offered the directors in the CIO, $350,000 tax-free in preparation for these coming elections. All these people, all this money is being spent to help Mnangagwa win the elections. The nation's resources are now being channeled to the glory of Caesar at the expense of the good of Rome, the good of Zimbabwe. This is what we are facing in Zimbabwe. This is the reality that we have got to deal with. I think to keep on pretending that these elections are free, fair, and credible is absolutely nonsensical. And for the ordinary Zimbabwean who are being conned by the opposition to think that the opposition will win these elections, I think that is pathetic. After after 43 years of rigged elections, to believe that the opposition is going to win big in these elections, to me is pathetic. It is a pity that some intellectuals even believe that nonsense. I can understand the people in the rural backwaters. In fact, those people in the rural backwaters, they have no choice in this. Zanu PF is able to frog march them. This is why they've got village heads as Zanu PF commissar, chiefs, where if the people in the area fail to vote for Zanu PF, they have turned to those people and told them in no uncertain terms that they cannot live in that village. It is the intellectuals who really are letting the country down. It is the opposition that are selling out. We can no longer pretend that the opposition is fighting in our corner. The opposition is not fighting in our corner. They've stopped fighting in our corner at the very earliest during the 2008 to 2013 GNU, when they failed to implement even one meaningful democratic change, although that was the golden opportunity to do so. And ever since, they've been participating in flawed elections for no other reason other than greed. We have got to stop this madness. It's for us to stop this madness. We cannot pretend that there's nothing wrong here. We know there is everything wrong here. And we know as long as Zanu PF has got the opposition in its deep pockets, nothing is going to change. And Zanu PF is confident about that. Mnangagwa will be looking at 2023 elections. The opposition will participate in the same numbers, not quite as big numbers as in 2018, because I don't think that there will be many people there who can afford to pay the US 20,000 that is now required for those who are going to contest as presidential candidates. Even members of parliament, the amount has been reduced to maybe 1,000 US dollars. Not many people can afford that. So that will reduce the numbers, but the numbers will still be very large. Enough for him to be able to turn around and say, well, if the elections were not free, fair, and credible, why are all these people participating? And we know why they are participating. They are after the US $40,000 that the regime is offering as bribe. Even for the losing presidential candidates, Mnangagwa is seen to it that they are rewarded through this Pollard arrangement. Zimbabwe cannot afford to have another 5 years of this corrupt and incompetent Zanu PF rule. These elections are being rigged. The quickest way we can stop this is saying, no, we don't want to participate in these elections, and we should have free, fair, and credible elections. But that is not going to happen because ZANU PF has got the opposition in its pocket. He's got ZEC officials in his pocket. He's got the police in his pocket. All those people involved in the election process, they are now in Zanu PF's pockets, including the opposition. I think it's for ordinary people now to stand up and saying these elections are flawed. The opposition are corrupt and incompetent and they are selling out. Our task in 2023 is to show that the process is flawed and illegal. That is not a big ask. The evidence is there. There's a mountain of evidence showing that Zanu PF is rigging these elections. The second task is to show that the opposition are participating in this regardless out of sheer greed. Nothing else. It's not because they're that stupid that they can't see the elections are being rigged. They know they're being rigged. So we have got to make sure that the opposition, everybody knows that the opposition no credibility at all, no political credibility. Combine those two, we can pressure international organizations, bodies like SADC to stop endorsing Zanu PF rigged elections. The last thing we want is for SADC to give Zanu PF legitimacy. They've done that in the past. We must make sure that that does not happen again. Stop Zanu PF getting legitimacy will enable us to move back to the situation we were in 2008 when the GNU was formed. We need a new GNU. The new GNU will differ in one subtle way from that of 2008. This time we'll have people, men and women, competent enough to implement the democratic reforms and dismantle the Zanu PF dictatorship so that we can finally have free, fair, and credible elections. As long as Zanu PF is in power and has got the opposition in his pocket, ZEC, the police, etc., etc., we are not changing this present political system. And as long as this present political system continues, the tragic reality of the suffering of the people of Zimbabwe will continue. We will continue to see the glory of Caesar at the expense of the good of Rome. The glory of the dictators like Mnangagwa at the expense of the good of the people of Zimbabwe. That is the reality. Thank you and good night.